Welcome to Rauta. This video is done in commercial collaboration with our sponsor, Steelfest. Bienvenidos, Brujeria from Mexico. Brujeria de Mexico. Now, this is an interesting band for so many reasons, and there's a reason why I decided to give this one a classic review. Why so? First of all, Brujeria's debut album is 30 years now, and because I got to interview these interesting bands so many years ago, I decided to revisit some of their material. No, to be totally honest about it, I never actually listened much Brujeria, so most of their material just flew over or went under my radar, so to speak, and as such, I don't know, something for some reason happened and never kind of totally dug into them. So now to make these amends, I decided to go for their first album and let's do a classic review. And once again, there will be interview linked to this review. So what is Brujeria all about? Now, there are so many ways to answer this question, but first of all, it's always been this kind of a masked group flirting with death metal, grindcore, and, well, Mexican themes. And there are lots of things about drugs and narco politics and whatever, and also, I guess, to Mexican pride, which is here mentioned as one of the topics related to the themes of Brujeria. But it has always been also somewhat political band. I mean, their statements when you see them live, and they are, by the way, great live, makes them a little bit different than a lot of other bands. I mean, there's certain kind of a hardcore slash punk feeling to it, how they perform and how they are having good time. But also when they're masked, it creates this interesting layer, like as if they are to hide their identity on purpose, even though given the internet era everybody pretty much can figure out who the members are or where in the band. Which brings me to another topic of this band, which is always very fascinating. Now, Brujeria has always been more or less some kind of a supergroup side project. That being said, there have been and still are members from various other bands, and I'm not going to list them all. You can pretty much just figure out them using Metal Archives and other sources, but Napalm Death among others. There is Cradle of Filth link, Dead Kennedys link. There is, links to bands such as Carcass and the like. So it has always been the kind of a band that had members from various very successful metal bands, and it most definitely made this band none less interesting. Quite the contrary. Then you're figuring out, so okay, why these guys who have been in the metal and hardcore and punk and other scenes for so many decades, why they need just another project? Now, to that I don't have answer, and that goes anyway beyond the scope of this review, but there's just something that really keeps me interested in this band because, well, first of all, it's something different, and of course, it's rather well made. But how about this first album, Matando güeros, which by the way features rather grim and brutal cover image. Now the first album is filled with short tracks, almost 20 of them, and that being said, still almost, barely more than 30 minutes. Which brings us to the very core and the essence of the band. It's kind of a death metallic, but not in the purest form of sense. Hence, this band is often labeled as metal archives as well as death metal slash grindcore. While there are not so many pure grindcore elements, I mean, whether we're talking about early days of, Carcass or Napalm Death or the like, well, Brujeria is not exactly that. But there are similarities, and I guess it comes with the territory when some of the members are indeed from the same scene. Now, this first album of Brujeria is interesting also because, once again, not only it starts with very Mexican-related narco topics, but it's also, kind of American-made, and then it's also having elements from Europe, but then again also from Mexico. So it's kind of like a Tex-Mex blend in a ways, but going beyond that and having those death metal parts flirting with kind of a punky, hardcore-ish and grindcore stuff, well, it creates one of a kind flavor. However, this being said, made 30 years ago, nowadays this album seems a little bit, I wouldn't say it, but I still want to say it, dated. That is, it almost feel like some of these ideas are not exactly working that well anymore. I mean, after 30 years. There is a feeling that this band is going somewhere. I mean, clearly, if you put this into the timeline of things, I mean, you can pretty much figure out, okay, 30 years ago, these guys were, if not actually pioneering, at least creating something a little bit different to the given genres than just your everybody's cup of tea. But nowadays it feels like, yeah, the band is definitely potential and creating something interesting with their death metal riffs and going kind of a crossover with it, but also kind of emphasizing the fact that there are lots of filler parts. That being said, if you were not a fan of the band back in the days when it was fresh and new, maybe nowadays it's a little bit harder to get into. Mind you, it's not about the production. It's not about those aggressive vocals and whatever. It's more like this album seems a little bit hurried. That being said, if a little more time and maybe budget or whatever focus was given to the album, maybe it would actually sound more powerful. Now it seems like with these 19 tracks or so, it's almost like you would have the need for scissors to cut these pieces out of the whole thing and make it even more compact. But in a way that I guess would remove part of the charm, which is here with the very, very, I wouldn't say naive, but kind of a demo level feeling that like we're gonna do something different and we don't care about the rules or whatever there is out there with, death metal or grindcore or whatever the genre is. This album is partially good and partially it's just kind of a mediocrity or at least closer to lukewarm, kind of a decent like stuff. That being said, once again, I think the band later on evolved into something better. But this being 30 years old, it's kind of a hard to really go too harsh against them and say like, yeah, it's not that good because there's so many better albums nowadays. It's part of the evolution and all that. So can't really be bitchy about how the band was doing 30 years ago. That being said, this one is still interesting to visit or revisit nowadays, but maybe it's not the kind of a classic I am personally looking for. I mean, nice ideas here and there, but is it something that I need personally for my own collection? Not as much as their latest album from 2016. But these are always matters of taste and opinion. So whatever you do, it's up to you, of course. But those who are very much virgins or next to virgins like me to Brujeria and not totally familiar with the given style, I urge you to check out the early materials of Brujeria, or if you already know them, check out the later ones if you haven't done so far. Classic or not, this is it, what it is, and check out the interview done a few years ago in Helsinki, Finland, and check out how the band was back then. See you soon with more classic reviews and worst to best ranking videos coming your way. Take care. Bye bye.